Hello, everyone, and we're here with Martijn Verburg, who is the Principal Software Group Manager, who's going to talk to us about OpenJDK 17 and some of the new features that are coming. Martijn, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Martijn. Some of you will know me as a diabolical developer in the Java ecosystem. I help run the London Java user group, and these days I work for Microsoft of all people. Yeah, very pleased to be here and ready to help push OpenJDK and Java forwards with some of the help from our friends here at Microsoft.
And you used to work for another company that was acquired by Microsoft. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. That's us there. Yeah, so I had a startup called JClarity, which I co-founded with Ben Evans and Kirk Pepperdine, who might be familiar names to some of you, especially if you read those O'Reilly books, some pretty familiar author names there. And we'd built a company around using machine learning to try and figure out why Java workloads weren't performing as well as they could be. Right? It was a root cause analysis system. During the time we had that startup, we also were looking very much at the situation that was happening with OpenJDK and Java itself. Due to some changes in the industry, there were some challenges around folks being able to have a guaranteed Java that was both free in cost and free as in use. And so through pure community efforts and partnering with Red Hat and IBM and others, we built out something called Adopt OpenJDK, which is now at Eclipse Adoptium. And, I think Microsoft took an interest in all of that sort of combined work we were doing. And I was forced to eat my hats because I think something like 10 years prior, I had said that Microsoft was an evil company and I would never, ever work for them, being the free open source software kind of chap I was back in those days. So it's a lesson for you all. Never make outright statements like that in your early career.
And so Microsoft is a huge contributor to open source. And Microsoft also has a big Java engineering team. Tell us a little bit about the Java engineering team and how it all fits in.
Yeah, sure. So we started about 2.5 years ago now, so around August 2019. The group has a whole bunch of different functions. So we are inside a part of Microsoft called Developer Division in the Runtimes and Languages group. So our sister teams, for example, would be things like .NET, C++, Python, and so on and so forth. So we're the Java group within there. So we work primarily on Java itself. So in particular, Hotspot, the JVM, we really look deeply at the performance of that, garbage collections, the just-in-time compilers. We port Java to platforms that Microsoft is deeply interested in. So Windows on ARM as a classic example, that was a recent one. And also actually helping developers where they are, which is quite often these days on Apple Silicon devices. So we help with that port as well. As you can imagine, we're Microsoft, we're a huge cloud vendor. We run millions of JVMs on behalf of our customers, whether that be internal customers or external customers. So we do an awful lot around diagnostic tooling and performance tuning those workloads. And then, of course, we just continue all of the good community work. And the thing, the main reason we joined Microsoft and we love it here is, Microsoft is all in on open source. They're all in on developer communities and developer tooling. And it was just, the perfect place for us to go to.
So the interesting thing about the community, the internal, I see you've got internal community. Like you have 1,500 people in that community. And it is such a vibrant place to go that it has webcasts. Microsoft uses Java heavily. You've got 1,500 people. Where does Microsoft use Java?
In all sorts of places. And this was one of the really fun things when we first arrived. We started talking to all of the fellow Java enthusiasts inside Microsoft, including yourself, of course, Rory, and a bunch of others. And it was, Microsoft's a huge organization. And as it turns out, there is Java just about everywhere. In Azure itself, there are tons of services, and even at the very core of Azure, there's a whole bunch of Java which helps run Azure itself. Household names like LinkedIn, of course, Mojang's Minecraft, very important for the children out there in particular, and children at heart. And so there's an awful lot of it, and it continues to grow. And what we've been able to do with that internal community is bring all of the various leads of each of those individual areas together into one big community, and then also enable everyone else at Microsoft who's always been curious about Java to really learn how it works as a community and how it works as a technology. And so, yeah, So Microsoft does rely heavily on Java and will continue to do so going forwards.
I see right at the bottom of the slide, you've got 1.5 million Java users on VS Code Java. That is pretty heavy. And that also allows us to give back to the community, because we can ask people to feed back with telemetry and to issues. So how does Microsoft give back, and using the leveraging off that open source community?
Yeah, so Microsoft is all in on open source, as we say, and all the folks who've joined Microsoft from the Java ecosystem into the Java engineering group that I run, and other sister teams as well. So your group as well, of course, and dev advocacy there has got a ton of well-known Java names like yourself and Julian Dubois and folks like that, Brian Benz and many others. And really, the key is to contribute to what we call the keystones of the Java ecosystem. And for us, some of the keystones are OpenJDK itself. So that's the open source implementation, which fundamentally is Java for all intents and purposes. Eclipse Adoptium, which is the vendor neutral build of Java that the entire ecosystem will be able to use for free forever. And also other Java projects at the Eclipse Foundation. We've also started open sourcing a bunch of our tooling and our own OpenJDK, of course. We have a Microsoft Build of OpenJDK, and you can find that all on GitHub.
You keep on saying OpenJDK. Now, I come from a background where they mentioned the JRE, OpenJDK, JDK, JVM, hotspot, and everything. Can you just tell us, what is the OpenJDK, and how does it relate to Java?
Absolutely. So OpenJDK is both a project and a community. It would be my take on it. So behind the scenes, there's a lot of kind of boring standards body stuff that goes on. So I'll try and explain that. Java itself is actually a standard. There is a bunch of Java specification requests, which are very formal documents defining exactly how the language and how part of the runtime should work. And that's what allows all these different vendors to build, different Javas effectively, but as long as they meet that Java standard by passing something called the TCK, which is a technical compatibility or technology compatibility kit, I should say, then they can, say they've passed that, and everyone knows they're Java compatible. So OpenJDK is, I guess, kind of a de facto implementation, really. It's officially called the reference implementation for the spec, but it is the open source project that, Oracle builds its JDK from, Azure builds Zulu from, we build our Microsoft Build of OpenJDK from, Eclipse builds its Adopt OpenJDK binary from, so on and so forth. So it pretty much is the heart of Java itself, and it's an open source project on GitHub these days, which is fantastic.
So you said that there's a release, and you can release in a certain way. So when do you release, and what is a major version? And try and speak to me about, and sell the idea, like, why should I go 11 compared to 17?
Yeah, no, all great questions. So you probably remember this actually, Rory. Do you remember how long it used to take to get a major version of Java between, say, 6, 7, and 8? Can you remember?
3 years. And when they released it, I was like, wow, we had parties. So I run the Johannesburg Java user community, and we used to have parties and just celebrations and streamers. Woohoo!
Yeah. So it used to get frustrating though, right? Because you would wait, an extra year for that particular feature, and if the feature didn't make it into one particular major version, you had to wait another 3 or 4 years to go get it. So Oracle and the OpenJDK community decided quite a few years ago now to change the cadence. There's actually a major release of Java every 6 months, which is really, really rapid. We're on to Java 18 coming out this week, actually. But the community as a whole, has sort of more or less coalesced around this idea of a long-term support. Now, that's actually a per vendor definition, but most of the vendors kind of agree on the same versions. So you, by all intents and purposes, you've kind of got this de facto state where every 6th major version, as it currently stands, so you can imagine 11, 17, and then 23, and so on and so forth, will be considered these long-term support versions. So we as Microsoft, we believe in modern Java, so we have very strongly pushed our customers to go to Java 11, and we're pretty excited to see that a lot of our customers are already going to Java 17. Minecraft, for example, Mojang, if you have a look at the Minecraft client, that's actually running Java 17 under the hood, which is really fantastic to see.
So I'm a very visual person. Can you just give me a graph to show me exactly where we are, where we're heading, and oh, okay, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so I've got this graph here. Now, this is already a little bit out of date because the LTS releases were effectively happening every 3 years, is what was happening. And when Oracle and the OpenJDK community started talking to the ecosystem, a number of people are finding 3 years just that little bit too long between LTS releases that everyone kind of agrees on. And so where I say Java 23 on this particular diagram, that actually may be changing to Java 21. There's a long debate going on upstream at OpenJDK and the open mailing list there about this. But you may see instead of going to Java 23, we'll actually go to Java 21, and then it'll be every 2 years. So Java 21, 25, 29, and so forth. So TBD on that one. But this is the state of play as it stands today.
Just like Java in 2030. Hopefully, like everyone keeps on saying, where is Java going? But to see it all the way through to there is pretty mind-blowing. Now, okay, so how did they get started now? So we've seen exactly what it is, and we've given a background. So how do we download this, and where do we go to get started?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you are running code on Azure, so if you come into Microsoft Cloud, then we highly recommend you use the Microsoft Build of OpenJDK. It's the thing we give you free support for. It's a thing that'll be optimized for Azure workloads going forwards. And so it's definitely the best choice if you're going to run workloads on Azure. So you can just go to microsoft.com/openjdk and you'll find all of the details there. And as you can imagine, like all the other major vendors, we support your containers. We support all the different types of installers, Homebrew, WinGets. It's in VS Code. It's everywhere where you need it to be fundamentally. If you're looking for a build which is more like on-premise, you are more than welcome to use the Microsoft Build of OpenJDK. We don't commercially support you there. And so if you're not comfortable with that, then perhaps the binary produced by the Eclipse Adoptium consortium is the one for you. So our Microsoft engineers are also involved in there. So that Microsoft does actually back that officially. And with that multi-vendor support, you get a lot of, you get a high level of community support. I'll put it that way.
I'm a big Homebrew fan because I just go brew update, and it takes your Microsoft OpenJDK and it just increases it, and it makes it really, really painless. Okay, so Java 17, we see how to start. Now, modern Java at Microsoft. What is all of the places that you can find Java?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we've heavily encouraged folks to move to Java 11 for a whole variety of operational benefits in particular. So Java 11 really was the release that was super good at being container aware. It had a whole bunch of extra garbage collection features and things. And so Java 11 we feel is like really the minimum version you should be sitting on today. Java 17, of course, actually came out last year, about 8 or 9 months ago now. Quite a bit longer, I should say. And the operational benefits in particular with the extra garbage collection options you have, with the extra string deduplication coming in and a bunch of other factors, means that if you're running like services at large scale, Java 17 is really where you want to go. And so internally, you're going to see the various Microsoft Azure services also announcing their GA support for Java 17 this calendar year, I suspect, for most of them.
Now, you've got some toys you're going to show us from developer productivity with Java 17. Now, some of those toys have been around since Java 11, but briefly tell us about what developers can be excited about.
Yeah, so I know this is a fairly short chat that we're having today, Rory. So there is lots. We do have much more detailed information in this, but in short, there's a whole bunch of fun stuff, right? Especially if you are having to manipulate JSON, XML, or any sort of markup language. You can now embed that inside your Java where you need to, so you can treat that as a first-class citizen. You can define really tight data structures with records, and you won't have that Java object overhead. So if you're doing that traditional, two-dimensional array mathematics, or trying to define points or geolocations or any of those type of things, you can do that in a much more efficient manner now. If you're an API or a library designer, you've got this concept of sealed classes and interfaces, which forces only clients to use your API in a certain way and only be allowed to inherit in a certain way. And then one of my favorites is good old instance of pattern matching. So you no longer have to check the instance of a class and then immediately the next line cast it back again. So the compiler now knows exactly what it is under the
they looked at what pain points were there, and they're just removing the pain points from the developer. But there's developer productivity, but there's also operational benefits with Java 17. Tell me a little bit about those.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing that most people have kind of, I think, missed in the industry, and we the entire OpenJDK community needs to do a better job at sort of surfacing this knowledge. You can actually create these really, really tiny Java applications these days. So it'll contain your application code plus the bits of the Java runtime that you need to run that application code. And you can get that package down to anywhere between 30 to 50 meg in a lot of cases. And you use these 3 tools that come with OpenJDK: JDeps, JLink, and JPackage. I highly recommend people check them out, especially if you're building microservices and containers. This is the technology that allows you to shrink down to the kind of sizes that the Node folks have always claimed as their great benefit, as an example. As I mentioned before, you've got more deduplication of strings. You've got heavy JSON or XML apps. That's particularly useful. Container awareness just works out of the box. It's faster to start. So people have always complained that Java's really slow to start and we need to move to different technologies to get fast startup. Because of the class and application data sharing, the second or third time you start your JVM, a lot of this information is cached. And so you'll find your JVM starts a lot faster. And then finally, there are some amazing new garbage collector algorithms that you can use. ZGC and Shenandoah are for really large heaps and where you want low latency guarantees. And then on really tiny heaps or on very short-lived Java runtimes, maybe people are doing small dynamic services, you have things like the Epsilon GC, which is a GC that actually does nothing. So there's no GC interference in your JVM. It's really cool.
So that's everything that's coming up to 17. But obviously, your team has already started on the next release. Tell me what I can look forward to that are going to matter coming forward.
Yeah, so at OpenJDK, things are grouped into these large projects. And the projects will work on these things called JDK enhancement proposals, or JEPs as they're otherwise known. So Oracle leads the vast majority of these, and they do a fantastic work in sort of guiding and shepherding the OpenJDK itself, and where they sort of go this really great strategic view of where it needs to go. And there's a couple of projects that we as Microsoft are very interested in, and we're very interested in, and we collaborate upstream with the likes of Oracle, Red Hat, and co on. So Project Lilliput is one where, again, Java object headers, reduce the size of those, cram more objects into the JVM, you get more bang for your buck. That's super important. Project Loom is one of the things that people have been waiting for seems like forever. And Ron Presler has been doing an amazing job of building a solution internal to the JVM that doesn't break any backwards compatibility, doesn't break the thread API, as an example. And what it'll allow you to do is to effectively run more code inside a large fat Java thread. And so you'll be able to weave streams of work inside a single thread, effectively. And that big fat thread is sort of mapped to a big operating system thread. I've used a pretty terrible explanation for that. There's actually a lot of deep computer science behind what's going on there. But it'll mean for much more efficient work around any sort of handling of millions of requests and things. So things like Netty and stuff like that should be able to take advantage of this an awful lot. And then, of course, Valhalla. So I mentioned before about records. I mentioned before about pattern matching with expressions.
I've been waiting half my life for Valhalla.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so Brian Gertz and co. not too long ago actually released kind of what they see as the final roadmap to finishing Project Valhalla off. So I think they've kind of solved all the computer science problems. They've written a bunch of PhDs. They figured out all the theory, and now they're just sort of going to, every 6 months, just keep knocking out bits and pieces of the full stack. And then we'll finally, at the end of it, maybe Java 21, maybe Java 23, who knows? They're not going to put a number on it.
I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait.
We're going
to wait.
Yeah.
Okay, so lots to do that. Exciting. Java so alive. And where can the cloud-based developer use Java on Azure? I'm an Azure cloud advocate, so show me all the nice little Doohickeys that I can use. Oh, yeah, that's a nice a graphic there.
Yeah. Now I'll probably get. I'm sure this is slightly out of date. So yeah, we'll have to make sure we get the slightly more updated version. But what we're really trying to say here is that we welcome your workload no matter which way you have it architected. We understand that people have gigantic monoliths that they just want to shift off their internal data center and just bring to a cloud for all of the obvious reasons, right? You don't have to manage your own infrastructure. So we have virtual machines for that. If you want to have container support, we have Azure Kubernetes Service. We support Red Hat OpenShift, and that's kind of like the next stage almost. And as you kind of progress, or maybe you're greenfielding applications and you're kind of looking at microservices, or you're looking at, I really want native support for Spring. We've got Azure Spring Cloud as an example. We have Azure App Service, which supports Tomcat and JBoss EAP.
And container apps.
And container apps as well, of course. Yep. Actually, that's super new. Maybe you know a little bit more about that than I do, Rory.
So container apps are a service that allows you to actually, spin up a container in the millions, and it's like pay as you go. If you're familiar with Lambda expressions, so Lambda, you really can do a hot start your Lambdas or cold start, and you can do pay as you go, or you can have a service there. So you literally can scale out, and then when you scale back, you just don't pay for anything. So imagine having a server that can handle gigabytes worth of data, just spins up, does its processing, and then spins down. And those are your container apps, and it's all serverless.
Awesome. That is very cool. And the idea is that even though you can bring your workload any way you like to Microsoft, there are a bunch of consistency layers for you, right? So there's all the obvious services as you'd expect from a cloud provider for data storage, JMS for we have Service Bus for messaging. There's identity management, logging, and APM solutions, all that good stuff. And also critically, the Azure SDK for Java. So when you're interacting with all these Azure services and you're a Java developer, we have a dedicated idiomatic Java API that Jonathan Giles and team have been working on for a good couple of years now. And it's a joy to use. So we really strongly believe in that.
Great. Okay, so you can bring your Java anywhere. You can go from the monolith all the way to the microservices. You can run using the OpenJDK, both on-premise and also, my favorite is the Azure Cloud Shell. You go in there, it's already installed there on Azure Cloud Shells. I can run Maven and OpenJDK straight off the bat without having to install anything. So in conclusion, how do we get in touch? What are the resources, and how do they, if you remember, download the OpenJDK?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So our external facing Twitter handle is Java at Microsoft. We have a ton of followers, which is really great. It's high quality. We don't overspam that Twitter handle either. So you can be reassured that you're not going to get a bunch of marketing spam on that thing. It's always interesting, relevant Java technology news. We have our Java at Microsoft home. You can go to microsoft.com/Java and you will see everything that's going on there across the entirety of our Java fleet, so to speak. We write very interesting blog posts. So a couple that are coming out shortly is LinkedIn's story of migrating from Java 8 to Java 11, including some real performance numbers on over 250,000 running JVMs. As well as like a deep dive investigation from our compiler engineers on a genuine compiler bug inside OpenJDK. So we provide some interesting technical content. And of course, Microsoft.com/OpenJDK, that's where you can go get our Java binary and enjoy that for free.
Martijn, always great to talk to you, and so exciting to see the continued investment at Microsoft. Last words to our viewers on what you would like to say?
Really, that I think the strength of Java, people keep writing off all bits of the tech media, write it off and say, oh, it's a dinosaur, etc. But I think it's such a broad community, and Java is used in so many places, and it's really the people that kind of push the technology, whether it be a library, a framework, or a user group meeting up and exchanging a new idea on how to get Java to work effectively in a new environment. So yeah, just please keep doing that. I think the Java community is why I've been here for 20 years, and it's why I still get up every day and I absolutely love it. And it's the people and the sort of open attitude that we have to technology. So yeah, love to see you online.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.